Welcome back to HRE Insights in 30, the podcast that brings practical, real-world insights on compliance, fraud, and everything else that's wrong with regulatory compliance. I'm your host, Justin Muscolino, CEO of High Risk Education. Our guest today is a friend and a former colleague, and we go way back, so I'm excited about this. He works in a space that quietly shapes the success or failure of organizations. That is leadership and talent, which we all need. Now, Thomas C. Byrne works closely with executives and organizations across financial services as an executive coach, recruiter, while helping people grow their careers, build stronger teams, and understand the demands of our current environment. Tom, welcome to the show. It is awesome to have you here.
Likewise, mate. It's been a while. It's yeah. I'm happy to be involved. Obviously, known you for a while now, so it's great to get stuck in.
I know, finally had you on here. So
Yeah,
I'm going to ask you questions that I'm curious about, but also in the sense of educating our audience on what's going on and what they could do differently.
sure.
So I love starting with a basic question, like, how did you get here? You built a career working closely with leaders across financial services. So what drew you into your current career path?
I think recruitment's quite similar to compliance. You fall into it. I don't think anybody really wants to. I think I fell into it from marketing, and now we're over 10 years in recruitment, and moving to the States was a big shift, and I think kind of opens your eyes to the next level. And you start speaking to leadership, and again, fell into legal and compliance recruitment, and one of the big things that I thought about is what drives you? You know that old cliche
Yeah.
by Simon Sinek, what's your why?
Hmm.
Uh, and thinking about it, I looked at what are the big decisions we make in life. You number one is who you love and who you get married to or whatever that looks like. Where you live is number two, and number three is like what do you do?
Yeah.
Um, so finding fulfillment and purpose in your job and something you do 40 to 60 hours a week is pretty important in the
Uh,
grand scheme of things. And I genuinely, maybe it's naivety, I thought, hey, if we're all doing something that we enjoy, the world would be a better place. So yeah, that was the big driver. It's just snowballed from there. And I think the more you have a general intrigue and curiosity about people, the more you learn about them, what works, what makes them tick, and the organization and organism they join.
no, I totally agree with you. I don't know how I fell into compliance training of all careers, but now it's like a passion and I love doing it. So
Yeah.
very interesting. So, all right, next question. Now, financial service firms get hiring wrong from time to time. We all know that. A
Mm.
lot of FinTechs, they struggle to hire the right people for compliance, fraud, and risk roles. So, Tom, from your perspective, what are the most common mistakes organizations make when they're building these teams?
Hmm. I think sometimes, especially when it's the first hire or the second hire, it's not understanding the full role of compliance or fraud or risk or whatever it may be. And it's just like, well, we've been prescribed that we need this person. And they don't really think, okay, well, what do we need as an organization? Not just what does the regulator need? What do our wider stakeholders need? Is it specific product knowledge? Is it specific skill set in terms of the hard skills? But more importantly, hiring for the soft skills. I
Mhm.
think one of the challenges, especially in the fintech world, is the transition from traditional finance into fintech is fraught with ambiguity. And compliance lives in the gray area. And so it's almost like you've got to find someone that can embrace the ambiguity and is with you with the journey, sees the bigger picture. So I'd say sometimes you get the not in my job description people that join a firm and they butt heads more than they facilitate. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, finding the right personality fit or even not understanding the hiring environment, trying to save money and hire a compliance or a CAMLO that, oh, well, they're about 20K cheaper.
Mhm.
but you're going to leave yourself exposed in so many different areas. And then the other one is, hey, you've made a great hire, but you've isolated them. They have no support. So you've got this incredible A player who can't do anything because you've either not equipped them with the tools, the
Yeah.
headcount, or the general visibility within the organization to make a difference. Um, that's a few just off the cuff.
So, and now this is a follow-up question to that because it's interesting. So, the repercussions of getting it wrong, we're talking about poor culture, we're talking about money. I mean, you're
Yeah.
spending money to train and hire somebody. What are some others? I'm just thinking about it.
Hmm. I think your impact in the institution's long-term development,
Mm,
its reputation. If you make a bad hire and people are aware of it, the compliance industry and our industry in general is a lot smaller than people take for granted.
mm,
I don't want to work for X because of X, Y, and Z. And
right.
it could just be the culture piece is a huge one. There's so much choice in the industry. You do not want to be branded early on. So I would say reputational risk is just as big as cost.
Yeah.
Um, Both from a recruitment perspective, you're going to have to then backfill that person if it doesn't work out. You're going to have to pay recruitment fees twice, and it's that duplication as well as time. The stakes are high. You're competing against so many other different firms that have got pretty similar operating models in a lot of circumstances. Time is money, is the old adage, right? But I think the time that you spend, you can really turn off investors as well.
Yeah, it's like you gotta put a level of care and not just tick the box or somebody else requests that you have certain experience. It's personality, right? So
Yeah.
if we're looking at like fintechs today, you
Mm.
know, the executive leadership of the fintechs, what kind of personalities, what kind of people are they looking for that might be different than just traditional, finance roles? Is there a difference?
Slight difference, right? I think you've got the best people I've seen are those with a genuine curiosity, and
Yeah.
they can be, I don't want to say a brand ambassador, but they are a culture ambassador. They love it. They love the compliance within this space. They love the thought of, hey, is it NFTs? Is it tokenization? Is it something else that they can get really ingrained in and really enjoy? Because the passion comes across, whether we like it or not. If you're sat there talking to people about it, it goes a lot further. And I think then that intrinsic motivation is usually what drives retention. It drives people to then want to be a part of that mission, right? And I think the leadership either comes from, hey, this person's so excited that they pulled a 70-hour work week and didn't
Mm,
realize it. Or they're able to talk such a nice game that you're like, that's someone I want to work with. And so
mm,
you bring people along for the journey. And I think that's one of the big ones is when you're hiring for leadership, yes, you can do the job day to day. You've got the technical skills, and I think we've got a lot of people in traditional finance with the technical skills, but a lot of people can't deal with the ambiguity, the business risk, and the
mm.
risk tolerance to go, hey, I'm okay to be able to take a little bit of a slight risk here and make that move because I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I also look at the entrepreneurial spirit. When
Mm.
you're working for a smaller firm, sometimes you're like the butcher, the police chief, every role possible. And,
Yeah.
the expectations have to be set accordingly when you go into this type of firm. It's different than a big bank. So I find that interesting, specifically. Now, this is a point where a lot of people want to know your advice. Now,
Okay.
yeah, this is the key part. So, there are a lot of professionals in compliance, fraud, and just financial crime in general that they really feel like they're stuck in highly specialized roles. So,
Mm.
from an advice perspective, what would you give someone trying to grow into like leadership roles in these fields?
Oh, I think early in your career, the one of the most important things to do is say yes.
Mm,
It's a policy that gets quite a lot of junior members of staff quite far. Say yes. Land and expand is kind of the term that I use. So do your job, yes, and do it well. And then once you've gotten good and you're at a comfort level of self-mastery, expand into cross-functional projects, any other crossover areas. Yes, you're ingrained in the product process, and that's going to be something we come on to later, is like it's really important to know your stuff. Especially with the changes in fintech, we need product managers to be able to communicate with you. But the other piece is how do you get involved with the wider stakeholders? Say Dave is off on PTO or someone's out, can you step up and cover their area?
Mhm.
I think one of the nice things we see in some fintechs is people are able to take on the interim CCO role, whether that's people are out on maternity leave, long-term sick, whatever it may be, circumstances. Having the ability to step in and cover someone is incredibly important, and just the ability to take on more. I
Mhm.
think offering people the opportunity to mentor as well. Step up, ask for it, ask for mentorship, ask to be able to mentor others and say, okay, well, this is what I'm doing outside of work. Have a genuine curiosity to go, okay, well, I've got the self-awareness. I'm not that good in this. I
Yeah.
don't know anything about this. I'm going to take some time to learn about it. There's plenty of courses out there that you can take minimal cost, even if it's just through like Coursera or somewhere like that. Just expand your coverage and build the equity internally. And what I mean by that is have conversations with people and say, hey, I've learned this outside of it. If you have a flow or like you have a bottleneck, I'd love to help out. And so I think it's just broadening the skill set and broadening the equity internally to say, hey, maybe I'm not 100% of a fit, but you're going to save on a recruitment cost external hire if you can transition internally into different areas. So that's a little bit of guidance.
Yeah. Also, you can also contact Thomas C. Byrne for advice and counsel in case you're stuck, right? Um,
That's yeah, secondary option, sure.
You know what's interesting? Like one of the issues that I found working for smaller firms, like you mentioned, is not having backups. Where,
Mm,
because of that, somebody goes on vacation, clients are pissed. They can't get
mm,
an answer. Your credibility gets hit a little bit, right? And I've seen that
yeah.
a lot. And it's not like a difficult thing to set up. You put on an out of office and you let somebody cover you, right? But
Yeah. I think we've seen it quite often, especially within the broker-dealer and people with licenses, right?
yeah,
Because if you need a Series 24 and that person's got supervisory capabilities, but they're out of office, what do you do? Who picks up the work? And if someone else can't authorize it, you're stuck.
yeah.
So it's almost like having, I call it like rotational abilities. I think in sport, you can have players that can play multiple roles. Yes, they're better in, say, a certain position, but they could cover if needs be if someone's, again, sick, maternity, PTO, paternity, whatever it may be. Or even that's not their long-term goal. And that's why having a team that is multifaceted and can dive into each other's skills, I think you also get appreciation for each other as well. So you
Oh,
go, hey, he's not just sat at them, she, they, whoever it may be, is not just sat in a silo. I get what they do, and I can understand why they might be having a good or a bad week.
all right. That's cool. Now, crystal ball
Yes.
time. All right.
Okay.
So, what do you think hiring looks like in fintech, say 3 to 5 years out? Do you think it's
Mm.
different? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but this is more of a curious question for myself, really. I'm being a little selfish here. But what do you
Yeah.
see it looking like down the road?
It's interesting. I think we'll see a few different differentiators between what people look for. I think the role of compliance and regulatory roles in general is becoming more business risk focused. Can you communicate with the business and being able to facilitate and enable them without putting the firm in jeopardy is quite an art form.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody is a little bit afraid of AI, including myself, that I'll be replaced. But I think there is a human element to what people do in regulatory roles that is you operate in the art. It's not a science. At
Mhm.
some levels, we'll have automation for, things like monitoring and testing, the intersection with technology. But I think what we'll see is more program manager positions
Yeah.
where you not only do the day to day and you still keep your subject matter expertise, but you're able to then be a subject matter expertise in the technology itself, and you supervise the technology, how it's used, how it's utilized, and if something goes wrong, for instance, you will then take on that. So I think we'll see more of that intersection of technology with compliance and
Mhm.
program manager position. I think one of the big things that people look for is like a product literate financial crime leader, for instance, who can build a scalable model and infrastructure and framework that then this technology sits within
Mhm.
whilst managing the regulatory piece. Um, and my whole thing, I think whatever happens whenever we get technology and we get the kind of focus in fintech is we're going to see a rapid shift and it's going to happen too quickly.
Mhm.
And I think we'll get some high profile overinvestments and engagements in technology that then leads to high stakes fines and investigations. And it always happens. We go too far one way and we pull it back a little bit and we go, you know what? We need a human looking at this. We need human intervention. We need to build trust again. So I think we'll see the shift forwards quite aggressively and then it'll come back a little bit and we'll walk it back. But I don't know how much the timelines are going to vary on that and how good it is. I've seen some awesome technology, but we shall see is probably the best way of putting it.
Well, we're going to do a follow-up to this podcast in 3 years and
Oh
see.
no.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We're going to see like what's going on. Nah, not to put you on the spot. But Tom, I'm so happy I finally get you on here. Thank you so much for joining, and it was an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
Likewise, thank you for having me. And yeah, it's insightful to look at the industry from a bit of a bird's eye view.
Yeah. Well, to everybody, thanks for joining and thanks for tuning in. My advice is always the same. Stay curious, stay disciplined, and then we'll see you next time.